We've got a special show today, and I'm going to take the back seat as the host. Normally, I take the lead, but you guys have so much knowledge to bring. So, Dr. Kimberly, how about you? You're just this pure light, and we met a long time ago, and you've been on my show already. And my gosh, you just bring so much joy to everyone when you're around there around you.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Noelle and Diana. It is a pleasure to be here, and I think to sum me up essentially is that I help people reframe their thoughts and transform their lives in the simplest and purest form. I think so often we get stuck in these thoughts and these behaviors, whether it's from external culture or our families or our friends, that we forget that we have choices in there. And so
Yeah.
I think I really help people find their choices and find their voice as well.
Wow. Well, I think that's, there's no coincidence that all of us focus on your voice, right? And bringing and
Yes.
empowering your voice. Let's talk about that and go from there, because that was a common theme
Mm.
between all three of us, is that we empower people to have their voice. So what does it mean to you to have a voice, one, but two, what does it mean to not have a voice? Because that's what the show is really about, right?
Yeah. I feel a lot of people, I don't think instantly Meghan Markle comes to my mind. And when Oprah Winfrey interviewed her and asked her, "Were you silent or were you silenced when she
Mm,
was in the royal palace?" And it's a very good question that every single one of us needs to ask ourselves. Are we intentionally being silent, or are we silencing ourselves because of some fear, because of something someone told us that we couldn't speak, or whatever traumatic events? Because I spent a lot of time with trauma, right? And I was under a lot of trauma with an abusive father, and so when he told me, uh, "Get out of my face, you disgust me," that narrative got into my system. It got into my central nervous system. It got into my bloodstream. It got into my limbic system. And whenever I felt like I was being too big and using too big of my voice, whose
mm,
voice got in my head? My father, right? Whose fault is it now as I'm 53 years old? Me, because I got to work on understanding that. But I was always like, blah, just out there, like almost in a point of getting back at my dad. So, but then,
mm.
as I said to you before, I've had to learn about the trauma. I've had to learn about my voice. And so many people are living with fear. They're living with trauma. They're living with they haven't taken the time to go down to the root cause of their voice, which I know, Dr. Kimberly, I know that's your wheelhouse.
It is, for sure. So, Dr. Kimberly.
Right. And for me, I chose silence for a long time. I don't think so much as it was that I was silenced because my parents always lifted me up. What I discovered in the world, and there's a thing called colorism in the black
Mm,
community. And
great to say that.
for me being lighter skinned and longer hair, people always made assumptions about me and they would always talk about me. So I wanted to hide. And then when you
Mm,
add adult traumas on top of that, sometimes I just wanted to be invisible and just let the things that I did shine and show up for me rather than actually speak. So I had to work to get out of that mindset that was given to me by the world and that I adopted.
Wow.
and Noah, can I tell people what colorism is? See,
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
a lot of people don't understand the issues that Black people have faced for so long. Being a former civil rights attorney, I have spent a lot of time, of course, in law school studying this. But the Civil Rights Act actually has various classes that you are protected. One of them is color, because there was this thing called the brown paper bag test, that if your skin was not as light or lighter than the brown paper bag, you weren't given roles in movies. You weren't, a face of a television show. You were disallowed to have certain jobs. You weren't allowed to be able to go into the master's house. There's so much with that. And so the Civil Rights Act, when it was passed in 1964, had to include color. So when she says colorism, that's because we, even in the Black community today, have issues with that. I mean, Stephen Curry was talked about, he's too light skinned to be able to play basketball very well. That was just 3 years ago. So we can go on that, but
no, and that's actually perfect. That leads me right into, and thank you guys for being such masters in your craft that we got to the core of it in 11 minutes. So thank you. So let's go there. Let's go to diversity, inclusion, and what that means to you and what that means to be in businesses. I know both of you help people in businesses with culture, and that's a very, very, very important part. So let's speak on that, and let's speak on what was, now I don't want to get this wrong, systematic, what was it that you said yesterday, that was such a powerful word, systematic racism, is that it? Or
systemic.
Systemic. Thank you for correcting me.
Yeah, of course. Dr. Kim, you want to kick us off?
Well, I think you would be the best, but I'll take a stab at it.
You go for it. You go, girl.
Systemic racism is essentially a system where there are written and sometimes imposed rules that are permeate the whole society. That's and the way we interact with each other, how we do business, banking, school systems, who gets hired, who comes over your house. It's an imposed cultural norm that occurs, and many times some people don't even know they're doing it. It's been so automatic that it's been passed down through the generations. And Diana, if you can help me clean that up a little bit.
Absolutely, and that's so good. So yes, I mean, systemic means it's embedded, right? It's in the fabric. It's in, so when you hear someone has systemic issues inside of their bodies, it's just gone everywhere. Wow. So when you heard George, so let me just kind of make certain, because I mean there's another question, but I want to kind of bring this in. When George Floyd was murdered, it was as if it was like a waterfall happened. First, we were talking about police reform, right? Because there was a systemic racial impact within the police system because there were so many Black men being murdered. That's called systemic racism. There is some embedded cultural norms and or rules, policies, and procedures, mostly culture, that have caused these, all of a sudden I will call it this constant killing of people. And what the word I want to come, it's going to come to me in a second. It's death penalty on the street, as I'll call it, right? And I can't say I coined that term. That death penalty on the streets is what causes that, is systemic racism. But when George Floyd was murdered, other businesses were like, oh my gosh, we need to look within our own businesses. We need to look within our own culture at schools, institutions, governmental agencies to see, are there systemic patterns of racism in our organizations by the way that we procure our talent, which then goes to the fact of diversity. Look around you. Are people diverse, right? Equity, meaning that, I'm the CEO, let's put it this way. I'm the vice president of this business unit, and there's a vice president of another business unit, and there's a woman and a man, oftentimes being paid 30% less, right? So that's called inequity, right? And then inclusion means that when you get the brown, Black, sexual orientation, just national origin people of different types of abilities and disabilities in your organization, do they stay? Is there inclusion? Inclusion just means that people are respected for who they are. So when George Floyd was murdered, everybody was looking around like, we need to clean this up. So that's why almost every organization took a stand, right? Because it went from police reform to, oh my gosh, this is the first time in my 53 years of life, I saw something so amazing, that diversity, equity, and inclusion, they weren't just statements. People were challenging people to be accountable to these words, you see? It
Let's talk
wasn't
about
just
that.
words.
Let's talk about accountability because that's your pocket, right? Both of your
Yeah.
pockets. So let's talk about accountability in in businesses and how it is so important to have accountability. And I think that what came up for me, and I am always very raw and real on camera, and what came up for me through this whole thing last night, I was praying and I was like, okay, so let's talk about the privilege aspect of it, right? Because coming from a white female that was grew up with money, I was very privileged, right? I had my darkness, but and then I also had guilt in that space from being so privileged, right? So let's look at both sides of it, where I had the guilt of being the privileged person, and I needed to take accountability that there wasn't as much inclusion as I expected, right? And so let's talk about that in business because that's the pocket that is really important. How there is the two different sides of it, and we the three of us were on the conversation the other day, and really there is two sides to it, and we want to voice all the sides to it.
Right. And I want to throw a little monkey wrench in
Yeah,
there because
yeah.
I think also when we talk about accountability, I think one of the main challenges for creating a system of accountability is that people almost automatically react to, but I'm not racist.
Mm.
I don't have a racist business. I like anybody whether they're blue, purple, or yellow. While of course we don't have blue and purple people. So how do we get to accountability when we can't even
Mm.
get past? Some people can't get past that word. My
Beautiful.
system isn't racist, and I'm not a
Mm.
racist.
So what are your thoughts on that then? Go even deeper, please.
So, what are my thoughts or Diana's
Yeah,
thoughts?
yeah. And this show is raw and real, and my audience will receive it. I promise you.
Well, like I said, I think it is really difficult, and people will have to separate the word from the behavior because we're talking about unconscious behaviors sometimes in this society. Very rarely are you going to see just because you're not shooting someone in the face or in the back, or you aren't calling someone a derogatory word, that's not the only definition of racism. Many times there's unconscious racism. There's racism by not including others. If you don't have a plan for diversity, equity, and inclusion, there's no accountability within your business or within your life to not be racist, so to speak. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, Diane.
Wow,
Yeah,
that was
I
powerful.
feel,
Thank you, Doctor. That
yeah,
was amazing.
it's
I
so
agree.
good. I feel, and I agree with that. I also believe that, we have, I like to say a lot of people, we don't, on a whole humanity level, we don't understand our biases.
Mm.
We have propensities based upon the environments that we grew up in. And I'm going to use me as an example. Growing up with a white father and a black mom, I had five older sisters and one younger brother. A lot of people looked at us and we're from a very small town. Imagine a white man walking me around all the time, because I don't look like I'm at all white. So I got a lot of looks in the early 70s. And so that was really strange. And so it caused me to look at life differently through, like I would call, a different lens. I had a different lens by which I saw the world. And so what I also saw was my parents were accepted at the country club. They weren't always allowed in certain types of areas, restaurants that I didn't like to go to. So what did that cause me to do in my adult life? I said, my kids will never go to a country club. We will never be playing golf. Funny story. My daughter wanted to play tennis at the golf club, at this golf and tennis club. My husband plays golf. My kids are not going there. Why? I have a bias against country clubs. Why? Because my environment formed my brain. So we all have to look at the zip code that we grew up in, the family environment that we had, the school system that we went to. All of that forms our initial bias, right? And if we're not careful, most of us, we will take that into our work.
Mm.
And we will utilize that by the lens by which we see the world. And until you start to do your research on yourself, you will then be living through your biases. Now, those biases can then impact the racial makeup of the way you see people. Whether you intend it, it's overt or implied, right? So that's where the unconscious bias comes in because, oh my gosh, I didn't even know, I'm not even aware that I even do that. Now, let me tell you something. Most people aren't aware that they're doing something a little off until they're around people who don't look like them, act like them, or talk like them, right? So that's the reason why when you go into a lot of businesses that are predominantly run by white men, they don't see what the problem is. Why are they upset about that? Or maybe I should probably have some more diverse pictures of people in my ads. But they wouldn't see that because oftentimes when you are with the people who look like you, act like you are operating out of your privilege. You see, that's because you have a certain, even as a black woman around a whole bunch of black women, I have privilege that you don't have, Noelle. Just like you might have certain privileges as a white woman that, we don't have, right?
Yeah.
And those privileges in this country have typically been a little bit higher, much higher for white men and white people in this country, right? So, and there's other privileges that we can talk about. But when I'm looking at racism, racism is a highly charged word, which then implies that you've done some things that have to be proven that you're racist, right? Because that implies that you get sued, that you have done something something wrong. So I like to take it a step further on the bias part and then go to racism.
I love that. I love that so much. And I knew we were going to go deep on the show. And that, like I
Oh
said, my
yeah.
audience can handle it. My audience is used to going deep about the unconscious mind and the unconscious belief. And so as a society, the unconscious belief system that we have against all of this, how do we bring love and wisdom into this world? Into this, how do we bring love and wisdom into this subject specifically?
Yeah. Well, I think that's, and I'll say a few words because I know you have some thoughts on this, Dr. Kimberly. So I believe that what we as individuals, first things first, you must own your bias. First things first, you've got to go before the throne of yourself and realize the junk in your trunk. Because until you are willing to go to your own trunk and pull out the junk that is your bias, ain't no way you're going to be able to try and work on your racist uncle or anybody else for that matter, because you need to really check yourself before you wreck yourself. Man, I'm on a roll. Junk in the trunk. Well, I'm like, man, that's good. Check yourself before you wreck yourself. I mean, so,
and can I say something too, Diana?
Yes,
I think
come
with
on.
that, when you're doing that self-assessment, and you feel that inclination to say, well, I need to check and see if I've harmed anyone. I think first the work needs to be done with someone that looks like you first before you go seeking absolution from someone of color to say, oh no, you're okay, you're not racist, you didn't do that to me. Because probably your friends, you don't act that way, and you aren't, there's a different type of relationship than is formed with the masses in general. So I think a lot of work needs to be done within your own culture before you seek absolution from other cultures.
Yeah.
Unless you believe differently. I know you have a different lens.
Well, let's look at it from also from taking it from the personal space to the business space, and then we're going to go into commercial, and we're going to take a quick commercial and come back. But I want to talk about also how we have to take ownership and accountability in our personal life into our culture and then bring it from our culture into business. So what's the next step that we get it all the way through into the corporations of this world that and what you guys are doing in this world is truly that. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, so I think, again, and I'm using my funny metaphors, but this is all embedded in science, emotional intelligence, for one. We need to make certain that we have a heightened degree of self-awareness. And then we need to manage who we are so that we can work on relationship awareness and relationship management, right? So I really feel that that's so important, and we have to adopt what Dr. Caroline Leaf, which, by the way, is a great one, Switch On Your Brain. But I'm thinking of Dr. Dwork, growth mindset. In order to get a growth mindset, we have to be able to do these things. Then because we can realize the own biases within ourselves, but then we can see it within our own culture, right? Being of mixed race, having a white father and a black mom, I was never accepted among certain types, even from Black people. So that's a big first step. Then when we go to our workplaces, then we can start to listen to one another, hear their stories, understand and empathize that everyone comes to work differently, and appreciate and respect that. That's my thought.
Right.
Beautiful.
And
Beautiful. How about you, Dr.
I love that you said to have some awareness when you go to the workplace. It's almost like you do an assessment of your workplace and like, okay, let's see the advertisement. How does my business advertise? What people are here? What is the company policy on diversity, equity, inclusion? And what ally do I have? Who do I have a relationship at work that I can ask these questions of? Like, wow, our business says that we value diversity, equity, inclusion. However, there are no executives, there are no board members, there are no whatever, that you can begin asking questions, not telling people what to do, but just ask the right questions.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel
So
this is,
beautiful.
you want to go ahead. I'm going to make certain I respect.
No, we have to go to a quick commercial, but I want to talk more about solutions when we come back. I think that this
Yes.
is really, really powerful, and I love you guys. Thank you so much for doing this incredible work in this world, and we will be right back, guys. Stay tuned for more powerful discussions with Diana Patton and Dr. Kimberly Wilson. We'll be right back.
Awesome. I was like, wow, this is good.
Well, notice how it froze on Spirit? I love that. It did. It froze on Spirit. Welcome back, guys. I'm so excited to be here on the Soul on Fire show. My name is Noelle Agape, and I am here with Dr. Kimberly Wilson and Diana Patton. They are leading experts in their field, and we are talking about diversity, inclusion, and how important it is. We talked about the unconscious beliefs of society. We talked about how you have to own yourself and your culture, how you show up in your world with your voice, how you show up in your life, how you show up with your friends, but even more so, how you show up in your business. And this is such a powerful, important topic. Let's talk solutions now, and let's talk about what you guys are doing in this world and how you actually doing things on the highest level to change everything that has been built over hundreds and hundreds of years. You guys are being a powerful force of nature in the business world, changing belief systems. So let's talk about that.
Yeah. So I feel, if I may, have three things I'll say, and then I believe will be beneficial to individuals who work in the organizations and in their communities. I think first things first is when you are looking at yourself and you are understanding who you are and how you show up and loving all of you, it is really just making certain that you have a spirit of belonging. And that you also have this firm and utter belief. You are bold and confident and courageous to be able to know that you have a voice, that you can speak up. And guess what? When you do speak up, that you need to know that you are going to be just fine. Because a lot of people fear being fired. They fear being looked over for positions. They fear being called a angry black woman, right? And so this is the thing that we have. And I know that this is a fear and this is a real thing that women need support. And I provide that within my company. I provide a lot of support as a RISE advocate. That's the first thing. Number two, I would say that most of the organizations need to, if you are an organization, I would suggest that you start what's called stories and courageous conversations. Have time, ask the heads of your employee resource group or your HR department or your in community or your engagement within your I would say the organization that you're in, and ask if you can do what's called stories and courageous conversations, where you are spending intentional time getting to know one another, right? And these are workshops that are very, very powerful. I do them, and I know that Dr. Kimberly does something very similar. So the other thing that I would say, that's the second thing. The third thing is I want to give people an acronym, and I want you to speak up with passion. And passion is an acronym. The P stands for pause. You have to pause when you're having these very difficult conversations, when someone triggers you, you need to pause. Then you need to assess. The A is assess. Give yourself some time to assess. Is this true? Is this right? Am I having a racist thought? Is this something that is going to benefit me? The first essence in passion is give yourself some space. Sometimes you just need to sleep on it, right? Don't go on social media. Then, after you've done that, speak. Pass, P-A-S-S. Pass on the first thing that comes into your mind and blurting it out. You see? When you pass, you gain insight, right? You gain insight on what's really going on. You're open to listening. You become open. The O is open. And the N in passion is knowledge. I know it's a K in there, but the K is silent. We all know it's silent. So it's knowledge. So you need passion. Pause, assess, get some space and speak. And then you can have insight and become open in knowledge. So use those things. 1, be bold and courageous. Number 2, do the stories and courageous conversations and have passion. Those are my thoughts.
I think that you could use that in everyday life, right? And in this show, we speak often of the unconscious mind and the emotional body. So how can people even do that on their daily basis, right? That's fantastic to even do.
I need to use that for my husband yesterday. So.
He's so good. He's so good. Dr. Kimberly, how are you? She's always has us laughing, which is amazing. I love that. You always bring so much joy. Dr. Kimberly, how about you?
Wow, and that's a tough act to follow. All of that, and I would add to that, to get past the trauma of what was done before.
Come on.
Don't get stuck in, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did this. Oh my gosh, I can't believe my company is this way. Because when you're stuck in grief, you can't move forward. So acknowledge the behavior, and what is the solution? How can we go forward? That acknowledging what has been done, whether it was intentional or unintentional, goes such a long way. Sure. And to add to that, just acknowledging it does go a long way, but it becomes even more meaningful when the behavior actually changes, where you don't just writing a policy and making an announcement at the company picnic or the annual board session is not enough. You have to put things in place to support the policies that you create. So have the infrastructure and the funds to actually create the change. And more often than not, if you're within the system, you're not adequately equipped to change the system because you are a product of it. You have created it. You need to bring in someone like myself or Diana to create that change.
Make that change.
You can't do it by yourself. So when I wanted to lose some weight, I got a coach because obviously my mindset and the behaviors that I had engaged in told me everything that I was doing is appropriate. Now I know that I wasn't supposed to go to McDonald's and have 2 large fries, 6 chocolate chip cookies, and I know I'm not, but I didn't have the framework or the mindset to actually hold myself accountable and make the changes. So that's what they have to do. Both.
You're over here preaching the message.
Well, I think that was a beautiful message, whether you're preaching or not. And
that's so good.
Let's talk about that, and let's talk about bringing the structure into the environments of business is what basically both of you do. Dr. Kimberly, I know you work more with one-on-one people, and you work with the culture in them. And Diana, so let's talk about structure because that is really an important component here of. And Kimberly, Dr. Kimberly, you said something that is so powerful. If you're in the system, you can't fix the system. And so go on. Can you expand on that, because that's a powerful nugget right there.
Yes, exactly. And I'm thinking of a nonprofit organization that I went into, and I did my culture survey assessments. And when I tell you that they were surprised about the issues that they were having, and they knew some of them and they tried to make the changes, but this was going on. It was a 25-year organization with the same women and not one iota of change. It's because they can't. They're stuck in their roles, just like in family systems. One, especially when we talk about alcoholic families and we have the hero and the scapegoat, people get stuck in their roles and their behaviors, and it's really difficult to change or to be seen differently. And if we talk about even biblically, even Jesus didn't stay where he was. If Jesus stayed where he was, people say, "Oh, that's just Mary and Joseph's son. What is he talking
That's what
about?"
he doing.
He had to leave in order to get into a different system for people to
Right.
listen and hear his miracles and
Yeah.
things like that.
Ah,
So
so beautiful. So how do we
Okay.
change the identity that's already
Yeah.
been so created and so ingrained? How do we change the identity?
Well, I feel that, well, from a neurological perspective, I'm gonna speak that the Noel language over here is, there's only two ways to do that, right? You can do hypnosis, or you can start repeating a new narrative.
Mm.
You can start to realize that I can't do this alone either, and I need help, right? And I'm just going to kind of segue a little bit about when I went through my depression and anxiety after George Floyd was murdered. I went and I got stuck. I literally was stuck. My brain was stuck in a season of life. And there was a lot of stuff I needed to work out from the trauma that I experienced years ago. And so I was, my belief system was a little shattered. And I also was really starting to ruminate on some negative things. And so I just believe that we all have to start to begin to repeat who we are and whose we are. And we have to start repeating that over and over and over and over again. We've got to gain a new narrative. And I'm just going to speak on something that Dr. Kim said, is that, we get like, what is that? I don't know, that Febreze commercial that when you become nose blind, you don't even know your house stank, right? You know what I'm talking about? Most people do not understand that their house is stinky. They don't really realize that they got stank in their they don't have no diversity. They don't understand what's wrong. They do not know what's wrong because they do not know, because they need to bring other people in, like myself and others, to be able to help them. But until they're willing to say, oh my gosh, my house is stinky. Oh my gosh, I'm not diverse. We have no equity. Then we cannot. And you can't do it on your own, because why? Because like I said before at the first part of this show, your mind and the narratives by which you carry come from your zip code, come from your childhood. And I just don't understand what the problem is. See, I'm married to a white man now, and he couldn't understand, this hair that I have. He was like, well, what's the problem? I said, if I wear my hair like this 5 years ago to an interview, I might not get an interview. He was like, what are you talking about? Because he didn't understand any of that, because he doesn't have to deal with that. He's completely nose blind. He doesn't get it because it doesn't impact him. So when stuff doesn't impact you, you think everything is good. And now the key to that is you, like you said, look around you. If everybody looks like you, acts like you, from the same zip code, number one, you are doing status quo, and you probably don't wonder what everybody else's problem is, okay? And then number two, you're not changing, and you certainly aren't getting creative. So companies out here are going, what's the benefit to me to have diversity? What's the benefit for me to be inclusive? Well, one thing is your innovation is going to go through the roof. When you bring people who are different than you, they ideate different. They come up with different ideas. I think different than you. And so therefore, I'm going to speak different. I'm going to come up with different things. My mind is constantly, and if you give me permission, sometimes people need to be given permission. I don't, but some people do, and so they feel like they can be their authentic, real self. That's called diversity. When I can be my real, authentic self, not this made up, completely, depressed, anxious person. I can't be my authentic self under that. I can't be my authentic self under fear, shame, guilt, blame. I can't be that. And I just want to close with this, because Brene Brown recently wrote a book called with Mrs. Burke. I can't think of her name.
Tarana Burke.
Tarana Burke. You are your greatest thing. Now, the reason why they wrote that book together was because Brene Brown has been talking about shame, shame, and vulnerability. And most people were like, do you understand the Black experience? Do you understand the shame that we've had in our Black experience? And so that's the reason why they wrote the book. Everybody should get the book. It's amazing. And also, it's
I'll
an
link it
anthology.
in the description if you.
Yeah, because I didn't get you that book list. Yeah, it's great because we need to understand that's why everybody comes to work differently. We can't have just equality. You have to have equity. So what that means is if three people are looking at a fence trying to watch a baseball game, all three of them they're all different shapes and sizes and have different views. And here's your equal sized box. Everybody gets a box and it's equal sized box. Is everybody going to be able to see over the fence? No, because this guy's this tall, this guy's this tall, this guy's this tall. What we got to do? We got to right size the box. We got to make certain this box a little higher for him, this box over here. And why? That's called equity. We are not a one size fit all culture.
I love that. So from both of you, what would be tangible steps that people could do on a daily basis to make conscious change in this?
Okay.
The power of the Post-it notes.
Say it.
I'm telling you, these are life-changing. They are magical. Whatever you talk about, creating new neural pathways and putting new ideas, put in who you want to be in here.
Yes.
I am someone who notices diversity. I am someone who embraces other cultures. And you place these in different strategic places. And every time you see it, you say it. So you speak it into reality. It becomes part of your consciousness. And then you put it into action because it's in multiple places where you go. And it's very hard to see something every day and read it and then not take action on it, because you won't be true to yourself if you're reading it, you're saying it, and then you feel compelled to do it because it's just that important.
Yeah, I also believe we all need to check our friend group. Like, who do you hang around the most? And it's really comfortable to hang around people who look like us, act like us. But if you have not done your homework that we've been talking about, your home internal work, it's really hard for you to be around people who aren't like, because you fear the unknown. So I believe people need to look at their friends group, and you need to see there's people on your job, people in your community that you can start to befriend, right? And one thing I'm going to tell you, we don't need any what we call white saviors. And what I mean by that is sometimes if you watch the movie Get Out, that's a very good movie for your listeners to watch. It might be people think it's scary, but it does have some undertones of diversity and equity in it. Because what I mean by that is, if you want to ally with somebody, you want to help somebody, right? You say, I want to help these people. I want to help these people. Don't just go in there assuming that you know what they need. The way that you do that is you go in and you be a friend. This is what Jesus taught us. Quit trying to tell everybody you're going to hell. Why don't you sit down and start having a conversation with people? Why don't you go where they are? Why don't you go where they are? Maybe you can go to a fair. Maybe you can go to a Christmas play. Maybe you can go to a Muslim play. Maybe you can go all the way over and go when they have it in our civil rights rallies. We sing the song, "We shall overcome." Well, the only way we're going to overcome is if we're willing to go over to other places and do things that are outside of our comfort zone. That's something y'all listeners can do, right? Because there's going to be a whole bunch of different things. There's going to be all these different. Go get a calendar that is a cultural calendar. Google it. Everybody out there, Google cultural calendar and go figure out where you can go to your chamber of commerce and go to just some different cultural places, right? Celebration. That's what these are, tangible things. And then also get your passion, pause, assess, space, speak, with your uncle who keeps saying some things, and maybe you can have a conversation with him or her at Thanksgiving after you've had the pie, okay? And you start talking about what's going on in the world. Now that's some real work, is to do some work with your family members. But please, please, please do some work on yourself first.
And
Wow.
I would add to that, do some work in your votes.
Mm,
When you're voting for judges, when you're voting for
yes,
elected officials, look
yes,
at what their policies are. Look at the way that they speak about other
yes,
candidates and speak about other communities. Are they using coded language like thugs and range of different things to show that they are othering people? So that's a real way to make change in your community. If you're part of a board or an organization, try to make it more diverse so that it's richer. If you are part of a scholarship foundation, make sure that that information, yes, it's open to everyone, but intentionally get that information to places like HBCUs, which is historically black colleges and universities. Get it to community centers. Get it in those zip codes that other communities live in that wouldn't typically hear about this. Put it in a newsletter.
I love that so much. You guys are so powerful, and thank you so much for bringing this incredibly important work to the world. We're going to take another quick break, and then I just want to highlight you guys and figure out what they can do when they work with you. Like, what happens when people work with you and the transformation you make once they. So we will be right back. Stay tuned, guys. Hi guys, welcome back. Thank you so much for being on the Soul on Fire show. We are today here with Dr. Kimberly Wilson and Diana Patton, and we are talking about diversity inclusion, and it has been a powerful, powerful show. Thank you everyone that's on the live. Thank you that has been on the replay, and I can't thank you guys enough for being here because you are bringing so much wisdom even to my world and my life. And as I'm watching my ads, I'm like, oh, they could be more diverse. They're all, so thank you for that.
that's
So
good.
let's talk about the work that you're doing in this world, because I truly believe that you guys are earth angels, and I'm so grateful to have you as friends, as allies, as to be on this journey with you. We're all in this incredible mastermind together. So let's talk about how you make change in this world, because I want to highlight that, because it can't go unnoticed, the work that you do.
Yeah. Yeah. Dr. Kim?
Well, I work individually with women and do group work with organizations. So we do cultural organizational assessments, and we do trainings as well as group coaching work. And this weekend, I'm actually going to host a conversation about holiday talk, how to not be alone and survive the holidays with healthy boundaries.
So good.
So it's absolutely free.
Tell me about the holiday talk. Below is the link, guys, and I will also link it in the comments. It is I can't say that whole thing, but I will link it in the
Bit.ly
comments.
holiday talk.
And so, what is that? Because this is so great and so magical, and I want everyone that's listening should go and sign up for it.
Right. So it's going to be 90 minutes on Zoom, and don't worry, you don't have to have your camera on. This is going to be a camera off event, so you can just sit and listen. And we're going to talk about healthy boundaries and vaccines and how to be comfortable and have courageous conversations. And we're going to have a question and answer period, because we've been so disconnected for the past 2 years, and now we're all starting to come together, right? And we're all seeing family members that we haven't seen in so long, and there's going to be some situations. Some people have been economically devastated. Some people are experiencing grief. Some people have delved into inappropriate habits, such as substance abuse. And how do we handle that? Some people are experiencing panic by going back and being around a lot of people. So we want to talk about how you can come in with appropriate strategies and create an exit strategy that works in your for you and your family, so that you can get the most out of the visit and not feel awkward or abused by that interaction.
So, Dr. Kimberly, before we move to Diana, because I want to give each of you the equal amount of time and space, tell us about courageous conversations, because that came up a lot, right? And that's what. So, what does it look like when you're in fear of having a conversation with somebody about whether it's race, whether it is about just them being uncomfortable, whether a boundary has been crossed? Because that I know is your pocket, right? And I just want to highlight that because you are a master in that craft right there, right? So.
Well, when you want to have a courageous conversation, I think the first thing that happens is stress occurs, right? So your amygdala gets activated and you begin to feel that stress response. You're either going to fight, flight, or freeze. Well, I want to help you to be able to stop that and be able to get some clarity, to operate with your frontal cortex, and definitely I got to get that acronym, Diana, passion, to be able to speak to what your needs are, what your boundaries are, and what is distressing you. So the first step in that is being clear on what it is that you need, whether it's with boundaries or your environment or the people that you're around. So that's what that's about. And having courageous conversations, it can be about anything that's uncomfortable, whether it's a past of sexual abuse, whether it's racist statements, whether it's being approached about money. So that may happen a lot this holiday season for people who have been out of work or who are underemployed. And there's always the one relative that people can go to that have the finances, and they get overused. And Diane, I'd love for you to add more about courageous conversations.
Yeah, definitely. So, would you, Noah, did you say something? Did you want to say
Well,
something?
I would like you to expand on the courageous conversations, but also how can you, your pocket is the
Yeah,
diversity inclusion, and so how can
yeah,
you have courageous conversations in that space as well?
yeah. So, to address the courageous conversations, I actually have a program called Stories and Courageous Conversations that I actually work with organizations to implement. There's a teaching component that goes with that, but that is a signature program that I offer to organizations. But my real work is with helping those women, those professional women who are in organizations and they need someone who from the outside to help them on the inside of their organizations to get past these challenges, adversities, and trauma. You know, I actually have a holistic health certification from the Institute of Integrative Nutrition, and I am an attorney. So I like to combine the two, you know, really creating these little advocates within people. And so when we activate your voice, you're going to be attending what's called my Rise Advocates Academy. It's an 8-week class that I take people through. We're just finishing up a cohort, and it's an amazing class. It is work, right? Because we go through what's called we do an excavation, and then we do our mindset mastery. We do what you're calling mastery, personal and professional development, then advocacy, and then service. And so it's basically like a mini law school, but it's also mini law school, but mini self care and getting your mind together. We go through a ton, and then what I'm offering is for people. Once you graduate from the Rise Advocates Academy, you become what's called a Tier 2 member, and a Tier 2 member receives daily, weekly, actually, text messaging every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 7 a.m. We have Tuesdays and Thursday morning Rise, and then we also get legal strategy from me. And I'm also, if you need a legal representation, because sometimes my women do, right? Because we're speaking up boldly and confidently. So people can go to riseadvocates.com to learn more about that. But then the Tier 1 member is what I'm doing for a Black Friday special. So this is anyone who wants to lean into my work a little bit more. You're going to get weekly messages. We're going to help you learn how to speak up. So that's my wheelhouse, is helping these professional women, and then of course going into these organizations. But I do want to tell real briefly my Head Full of Dreams program, where I help young brown and black girls dream. And it's in a school right now in Toledo, Ohio, the Ella P. Stewart Academy. And we have a program where we're looking at these young girls and say, just because of who you are, not because you got the cool hair, not because your outfit's super cute, or your shoes are on flash and your fit is tight, none of that. We're saying just because of who you are, You are amazing. And you can dream. And we're going to connect these young brown and black girls to dreams. So check it out. But you can go to riseadvocates.com, or you can go to riseadvocates.com or risewithdiana.com. And I'm all over social media. So I hope folks check me
Right.
out.
Well, that is incredible, guys. Thank you so much for bringing your so much knowledge to the show. So, key takeaways. We have just a couple minutes left, and then I have to close out with the closing. So, key takeaways. What is the most powerful thing that you can do? Tangible things that people can do. Key takeaways for this big topic that we're taking on, and more to come from this, guys. Just so you know, this is just the beginning. Dr. Kimberly and Diana and I are working on something behind the scenes that is powerful, and it is going to change many lives, and it's going to go global. So,
Yes.
Dr. Kimberly, key takeaways.
Key takeaways: check yourself, as Diana said, and use the power of the Post-it notes to create change.
Absolutely. That's so good. And that's super boss. I believe that everyone needs to have a daily practice. Every single morning you wake up, carve out 10 to 15 to 20 minutes to have a practice where you're journaling, you're reading, you're repeating I am statements. The Miracle Morning is really boss on that. But
Yeah.
really making certain that you are really doing your own self assessment, right? Getting those I am statements and repeating them often. And really, what you do behind the scenes is what comes to the front.
Yes.
So have integrity, read, 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 read as much as material as you can, and go make a friend and an ally with someone who's not like you.
Oh, beautiful. And thank you guys so much for bringing love and wisdom to my
Thank you.
show. Thank you for
Yes,
all of you're doing in this world. And I'm so excited for what we're creating. I know that it's just in the beginning stages, but I know that there is a lot here. I know that it is super powerful. So, Dr. Kimberly, just your website very quickly. Again, I want to, highlight that one more time, and then also with Diana. So it is Bit.Lily Holiday Talk with Dr. Kimberly, and for Diana, it is riseadvocates.com. I love you
yes,
guys, and I
I
am
love you.
so
Thank you
grateful
so
for
much.
having you on here. Thank you for bringing your
So
gift
much
to the world.
fun.
Thank you so much
Absolutely.
Thank
for
you for all you do.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Noelle, for this platform, and thank you for everything you're doing.
it's
Yay.
just the beginning, guys. I love you both so much. Thank you for taking your gifts to the world.
See you. Bye.
Bye.
Wow, what a powerful show, guys. I can't even believe I feel like we could talk for hours on everything that we were talking about, and we do have more to come. What I learned from this show was just be aware, come from your heart, have love and wisdom. Know that we are all beautiful humans doing this race together. And when I say race, I mean we are racing for humanity. We are standing in our hearts. We are truly loving the space that we are living in. We are loving ourselves. We are honoring ourselves. We are honoring our culture, but we are expanding beyond our comfort zone. And that is the most important thing to understand, is that your comfort zone is where you stay safe, and where you are uncomfortable, right, is where love and wisdom comes in. And if you allow love and wisdom in your heart, you will know that the world is a better place, and together we rise. You are more powerful than you will ever know. All of the power is within inside of you. And when you take your gifts out to the world with an open mind and an open heart, and you come to this world and you show up as the greatest version of you, I promise you, together we are the change. I love you guys, and I will see you in the next video.